Hi, this is Anabrese. Welcome back to part 2 of how texting can ruin relationships and what you can do instead. So this particular video is about recognizing triggers and how to deal with triggers basically in the form of texting. So how to recognize texting triggers in the first place? Well, this is where you've been having a conversation by text with someone and all of a sudden there's a remark made. Now it might be you that does it or it might be the other person, but we're just going to assume it's the other person for the time being to help you understand the process. So for example, if this is where suddenly this person sends a message and where it was going very friendly, going very well, you just don't feel good about this response. This feels like it could be a very reactive text message that they've come back with. It could be very obvious and in your face, or it could be very subtle. So it's getting to know the change in the conversation. So if suddenly the tone of the conversation just changes and it just doesn't feel quite right. So as I say, it could be very strong and in your face, and it's maybe they got angry about something you said or emotional about something you said. They may have even left a big long gap before responding. So maybe, one of the things you can do is look back at what you said to see if you maybe said something that caused the trigger in them to start with. But ultimately, we are all responsible for our own triggers. And this is where the misassumptions happen, the miscommunication, because people are assuming a certain thing based on their belief system, and then they can get triggered. And it's not your fault. It's not anybody else's fault when either you get triggered or I get triggered. It's for us to look at the trigger. So the other person is just a reflection, is just a mirror to show you where that trigger is, why that came up. But that's a whole other kind of video on that. We're just talking about general text triggers at the moment and what to do about it. So it's where the tone of the conversation suddenly changes, and it could be a coldness that comes into it, or it could be obvious anger. So what do? Well, my first tip is don't react. Okay, don't send a response immediately back. The first thing to do is allow a bit of breathing space. Go and make yourself a cup of tea, just take some time out. So it's just it's a sign for time out. Okay, so the first thing to do is just make a gap within the conversation. And what this does is buys you time so that you're not actually reacting to their message, their trigger. Because this is what happens a lot in relationship. It's like somebody gets triggered and then the other person goes on the defense, and then there's this back and forth, defensive thing that goes on because everybody's defending their position. Okay, so we don't want to kind of come back with another trigger, which then escalates into a huge argument. So we're trying to avoid things that are going to escalate into big arguments, or you end up blocking the person because there's this back and forth reactive messaging going on. So the thing is to spot the trigger immediately. And as I say, it could be you that does it, or it could be them. So just be not on the lookout, but just be aware that when the tone of the conversation changes, and you know what I'm talking about anyway, so it's when that message comes in that is a little bit off, that is a little bit not quite right, you can just feel it in your gut, it just doesn't feel quite right. So the thing is to give it some time, to breathe, to go and make yourself some tea. You could also respond by saying, after you've given it about 5 minutes, give it at least 5 minutes before you respond. If they've come back with a trigger message, don't respond right away. Just give it 5 minutes. And what this does is also gives them time to look at their message and go, oh, wait a minute, I said something there that was a bit, a bit triggered, or, a bit off, or a bit, so it gives them time to reflect. So you create this little time lag, gives them time to reflect, gives you time to reflect, so that we're not reacting. We want to respond intelligently. We want to respond maturely, emotionally, intelligently, in our communications and connections, so that we can have these transparent, open, loving relationships that are based on communication and getting, our stories right, and getting everything, out into the open, where we can basically, complete emotionally mature problem solving. Okay? And this will create more harmony in our relationships in general anyway. But the focus here is on the texting. So you give it some time, breathing space, and then you look to see, well, can I diffuse this a little bit? Is there a reply that I can give to this specific text that will help diffuse what they've said, will help diffuse, because I can see that they're a little bit emotional. They've reacted to what I said, and I didn't mean anything by it, but there's a reaction here. Is there a response that I can come back with that's just going to kind of like diffuse it? And this means letting go of pride and being able to have the emotional maturity to not have to challenge it at the moment. It's far better to, as I say, to leave these little text messages and triggers to when you're in person with the person, so that you can have an actual communication, an actual conversation. So as I say, it's avoiding these text wars, basically. We don't want to get into text wars. So see if there's something that you can say back that's going to help to diffuse it for the time being. Okay? And it could be something very, very simple. And it could also be, can I get back to you a bit later on? I've got to go now. I've got to go to work, or the postman's just arrived, or something. Whatever it is, because chances are you weren't going to have all day to sit on there anyway, texting back and forth. So just say, I'm on the run at the moment, I need to go and catch the bus, or whatever it is you need to do. And again, that can create another time lag as well, which again gives them time to reflect on the message, gives you time to reflect, and not be in reactive mode, because it's a habit that we sometimes have, is to be reactive. So it's just good to give it a bit of space and time. So just saying you have to go, giving time for reflection, and then that way they get time to review the messages, and they can see, oh, I was a little bit reactive there. And then you quite often what you'll find is that later on they might come back and say, hey, I'm sorry that, I was a bit, reactive there. So it gives them that opportunity to come back with an apology for what was said, okay? But it could just be that, it was not that important anyway, because quite often all these little reactions during the day are not that important. And it's so easy. We're so habituated to texting back and forth all the time, speaking, too much without a break, that something could have just happened that caused a bit of emotional reaction, and then they blurt it out, I should say, in a text. So the thing is, don't react back. Keep your cool and give it some time, give it some space, so that you can reflect upon what's actually being said. Try to look behind the words and see, well, where is that really coming from? Are they feeling a little bit hurt? Has something just happened, in their lives? Could that maybe be the manifestation of something that happened that morning that you might know about? They could be going through something, and this is just a little bit of irritation that's coming up, and it's not that big a deal, okay? So we don't want to make these little nuances into big deals, into bigger deals than they need to be. And the solution really is about coming together in person more, And this is what I advocate, is coming together in person to have those conversations when it comes to personal problem solving within relationships. Okay, so I hope that's been of help to you, and I'm sending you lots of love and harmony within all your relationships. Bye for now.